Welcome to Agile in Toronto at Night, a badass Agile show. This is the place where you get to connect one-on-one with the inspiring minds and compelling stories of some of the scene's greatest Agile thinkers. If you haven't heard of my guest this week, you've been working too hard. He's a coach, mentor, Agile leader, and TED Talk speaker. So come on over and join me at the table for Mr. David Dame. David Dame, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great as well. It's wonderful to see you, and I'm so glad you could make time for me today.
My pleasure. Anytime I get to connect with people, it's good, especially during these times of isolation.
You know, I'm going to come back to your thoughts on that, but before I do, I hope you got a drink handy.
Yep, I have a nice cold glass of water.
Good man. Cheers to you, my friend.
Cheers to you.
Now, David, it's been 2 years since you did your TED Talk. I'm just curious. I know one of the big changes for you is you've moved to Waterloo, but what else is new for you?
Well, moving to Waterloo was a huge change for me as well. And actually, probably getting used to this remote working thing, that's been new for all of us in times of change. But really, I'm really kind of coming into peace. I'm actually just trying to put the finishing touches on my book to be released, hopefully within the year, Leading with Imperfect Feet, which is kind of an extension of my TED Talk. And I've just been kind of, during this time of less commute time, I've been using that time to really kind of self-reflect and look at myself and, start exercising again and start eating clean. And I actually even picked up meditating a bit to get a more clear perspective on, if I have so many years left going forward, what do I want that to mean? And, deep stuff like that.
Well, you know what? I was going to ask this question closer to the end of our time, but one of the things I've noticed about you is that you finish most of your public videos and your blogs with the words, every keystroke is precious. So basically I'm going to sign off. What does that mean to you? What does presence and living in the current moment mean to you?
What presence and living in the current moment means to me is kind of feeling grateful for I've actually made it here. Many of the people know that I've had cerebral palsy. I was told that I wouldn't live past 12 and all that. But even the challenge from moving from a rural Windsor, Ontario upbringing to coming to Waterloo to university, to living in Toronto for a number of years, to moving to Waterloo, it's really been a journey to overcome. So just living in the present, and why I always say every keystroke is precious is it's really hard for me to type, and text to speech is nowhere where it needs to be because the way you talk is different than how you write. So even if it transcribes every word perfectly, it still doesn't sound right. So I will finger type, one finger type a blog, and then that's why my blogs always tend to be short. And then I always say, well, every keystroke is precious, so I'm going to end it here.
That's a really great way of looking at it.
Right, and it forces me to think about what I want to say and the most minimal keystrokes necessary. And kind of what we all love about Agile, right? Because everybody always feels Agile is about delivering everything more quickly, but my perspective on Agile is it really gives us transparency in decision making to build what is minimally needed instead of what is being asked for. And that's where my keystrokes blend in.
Far beyond being an Agile leader, you consider yourself a change leader. And we live in obviously very unique times. There's no question that we're not going to go back to things as they were. I think everybody's saying that. But I think you, David, are uniquely qualified to speak on two things. One is most people, we're learning through the Black Lives Matter movement that we don't know how good we have it as privileged people. And I think it's actually interesting in one of your blogs, you consider yourself a privileged person. And
Absolutely.
number two, I think we're learning what can we actually live without, right? Now that we're in COVID-19, we're reevaluating what is necessary and what is not necessary. So when you go back at some point when they reopen the doors and you're coming into Toronto a couple of times a week, you're leading your teams at a major financial institution, what are some of the things that you must change because of what's happened in the past 3 to 4 months?
I think about the flexibility in how we work. There's numerous articles out there that, every company is going remote. That's the new way. And then you start to see the articles doing the contrasting approach that we'll never be able to replace in-office ideation experience. And just like in Agile principles itself, there's no one framework that can solve it all. And I don't think we should have to choose one over the other. So one of the biggest mandates I'm going to be doing is how do we create a flexible environment that you can work from wherever and really have that balance of engagement and productivity. So really trying to update with the times that it doesn't need to be invented here and really get people to appreciate how much of a gift it is to ideate and whiteboard side by side together, right? Like those are the things that you really miss, are those side conversations that one-on-one conference video calls don't give you.
That's true.
And I think the biggest thing we have to do is really, what I liked about COVID was, what I liked about remote working, not that I love COVID, so what I loved about shifting to remote work was it really forced managers that had a tendency to still micromanage and try to control every aspect. Because of the asynchronous communication, they were actually forced to set a goal and trust that the teams were going to be productive and do the right things. So because the situation really caused that to happen, I hope when we come out of this, we don't take the lessons learned for the good practices that we wanted to do in normal times, that they can start doing things in normal times. Because what the crisis allowed for it was, it really made people feel comfortable to change because they had no other option. So when you give yourself forgiveness, especially at the leadership level, that I can change, and if I don't get it right the first time, that's okay. Because as you climb the ladder, it's almost like it's not okay to learn. And I think you need to make a mistake to learn. So it really gave them the explicit forgiveness to do things in a radical new way, because the previous way wasn't even an option during this time. And what I'm afraid of when I return to the doors is all the good things we learned, that empowering our teams, pushing decisions down, realizing they can be productive without us being close around them, and to do that. And really the most part is we don't need to plan everything out in detail. No organization planned for this to happen.
Not at all.
And look, they were able to pivot and quickly continuous plan and readjust to adapt to this new environment. And if we can do it under these critical circumstances that we've been through, why can't we do it in normal times? Why can't we trust ourselves that we're resilient enough to handle the change? Because we just demonstrated we could.
There's a great question you just asked for yourself. Why can't we trust ourselves?
I know, and we all get through that. I'm not immune to that either. I think, and especially when you kind of climb and people look to you to have the answers, and the truth is you don't always have the answers. But I think we're just so scared to be wrong, right? I think we're always scared to take a step back. Like, as coaches, we're very hypocritical, right? We can coach others to do it, but when it comes to ourselves, maybe we don't take our advice as frequently as we should. But yeah, why can't we trust ourselves? Why can't being wrong is the path to being right? I don't know.
You were onto something when you spoke about fear. I think that's right on. And it brings me to my next point. One of the things about your story of the 5K marathon that you walked maybe a year or so ago, maybe 2 years,
No, it was actually 5 years ago.
Was it 5?
Yep.
Forgive me.
But I'm trying to work out to do another one, so.
Good for you. That's so inspiring. But one of the best parts of that story is that you realized that what was holding you back was a fear of falling, physically falling. And it's so wonderful and it's so leader-like that you're willing to be imperfect in front of others, because what sustains you and what makes you interesting and what makes you compelling is your sense of vision. Now, I always say, if you go into, anytime I speak somewhere, I'll ask people, say, how many of you are aware that your company has a corporate vision? And most hands will go up. I say, keep your hand up if you're ready to recite it to me right now. And most hands go down. And then say, if your hand is still up, let me ask you this. How many of you have a personal vision statement? At which point, most hands collapse back to the table, which is challenging. I'll put it that way. My vision statement is pretty simple. It's to create art and experiences that connect and ignite people to a life of distinction, simplicity, and strength, and to create heroes. And that allows me to do podcasts and allows me to do Agile coaching, but it still underpins everything I do. So I'm very curious, what is your vision?
My vision is I really like to create an environment where people can be their best selves. And showing them you don't get there because you're perfect. You get there because you're aware you're imperfect. And you're going to get there not because you're going to avoid making mistakes and falling down, because you're going to get back up and keep going forward.
Absolutely. And that brings up another question. You seem like someone who doesn't, I mean, your headline in your website is, I have CP, but CP doesn't have me, which everyone knows that, everyone loves that. But you seem like someone who truly believes that that circumstance is your advantage. Is that so? Would that be true?
I truly think it is, right? Because I've had people ask me many times, if you could be born with cerebral palsy and relive your life, would you? And I have to honestly say I wouldn't, because living with cerebral palsy has taught me adversity. It is taught that I can't really follow the path of others, that I have to create a path that most of the time is unknown and it is ridiculously complex. But I think my cerebral palsy has also made it where if you're shallow or if you're kind of a person that can't deal with it, you're not going to hang out with me. So it's really kind of gave me a way to go through the people that are not genuine and real and really focus on the people that are genuine and real, because a lot of my success has been, I've been fortunate enough to be around great people.
Wow.
And I don't know who to thank about that, but I'm really a collection of all the amazing people that I've got to have in my life that has made me who I am. And if I didn't have cerebral palsy, I maybe wouldn't have got those opportunities.
Incredible.
I've had amazing colleagues and people that I've managed that I still think about to this day, every single one of them.
Really? You know, you shared a story a while back about your very personal frustration with, I think it was a PSW that didn't show up for a shift or something like that. It was basically your frustration with finding and keeping good, accountable people, because you yourself are obviously a resilient, accountable, and driven human being. Now, if you then were to coach such a person existed on your team, you know, they're not showing up, they're not playing full out, what would you tell them?
I think a lot of times, like you mentioned earlier, I think people sometimes lose sight of the vision or their impact on that vision. So what I like to tell people that are checked out is, you know, you can still keep going through the motions and you can keep doing what you're doing, or you can get aligned to what matters to you and find that passion and do that. Because when people don't show up, when people don't perform, I don't think it's human nature that people want to be that way. As human natures, we have pride and resilience, and I think sometimes it's just we're not in the right situation. And even when I've had to let people go in the past, it's nothing to their ability. It's just the wrong time for them to bring their skills in the organization, or this organization isn't going to be able to bring out the tools they have. So when I get a PSW that didn't show up, I don't think they truly realize what the impact of my life is. If you don't show up, I don't get out of bed. If I don't get out of bed, I don't get to work. Right. If I miss meetings with leaders that I might only have an opportunity to meet with them every 6 to 12 weeks, you've actually pushed a lot of you've taken away my opportunity to really connect with them for another 6 weeks, and that might cause some initiatives to fall behind, or some kind of insight on how we have to pivot. I think when people do things, they get caught in, like human nature, we get caught in our own surroundings.
Of course we do. Yet it's so difficult for people in real time to discard toxic or damaging or corrosive relationships. But the way you're looking at it is you're saying, listen, this isn't anything personal. This is not about you. This isn't even about me. This is about us working together and our joint ability to change the world. You said it best. Every keystroke is precious. So if we waste time trying to train you up on how to show up at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. or whatever the time happens to be, that's time we can't spend making the impact that we want to make, which I know is super important to you. Yeah.
Well, exactly. We all have our own efforts, right? We all have our struggles to even get to the front door. But we do it because we have a bigger purpose that's beyond ourselves, and we don't want to waste that time, because if anything that living with cerebral palsy has taught me, life is incredibly precious. And sure, I could keep busy and go through the hours of the day, but if I can connect with someone and make them be their best selves, or help change an organization to service their customers better, and at the same time creating an environment where people are passionate about outcomes and creating, and wow, that's going to get me up again. That makes the keystroke worth it. That makes the struggle worth it.
Mm-hmm. When you were training for that marathon and you learned the lesson of falling down 7 times to get up 8, that's such an important lesson for people to have. And in Agile, it's closely tied to our ability as leaders to trust our people. How do you teach that? How do you instruct that? Creating a safe place to fail is easy to say, it was really hard to do. So I'm curious what you do in your environments to structure that and to foster it.
What I try to make is, learning's got to be a first-class citizen, right? As you know, every company wants innovation, but they think innovation is 100% guarantee. And innovation is maybe try 100 things and maybe one thing comes out. But if we're always looking for an ROI on every effort, I always like to say for innovation, if we don't do it, what is the ROI on irrelevance? And so when you're trying to build, you got to build learning and failure into the system. And it's really moving away from velocity and outputs to what is the goal we're trying to achieve? What is the outcome? Because if we keep the conversation at that high enough level, right there, and the mistakes and the stumbles we get aren't taking the limelight. It is the outcomes that we're trying to achieve. And it's really trying to explain to them, we're not repeating what we've done. We're out of the era where we're just focusing our efforts for mass reproducing something. Every initiative in today's new modern economy is both creative and complex. And for both of those things to be able to, if we're able to use our creativity to battle complexity, we have to imagine it's not perfect. And I'll use my examples of growing up with cerebral palsy. I can't navigate the city like you do. If there's no curb cuts, I got to find a new way, a new route where those curb cuts are. I got to find where that special access is, which causes me to go to the wrong door, make a numerous amount of mistakes to learn where that path is. But it's in that journey of resilience that I find newer opportunities or be exposed to new surroundings that even make that possible. So it's really kind of making them remember that they're not perfect. They've made mistakes in their life. And if you dig deep into their soul, they'll share with you some of their greatest mistakes. But look, they're sitting in their seat of privilege and power, not because they avoided them, but because they overcame them. You can't overcome something that you don't admit or acknowledge that you made a mistake previously.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, you brought up an important point, which is that we're now talking less about velocity and more about outcomes. It's a premium example of how Agile is shifting, that it wasn't meant to be static, that there are no prescriptions and there are no lasting frameworks really, because it's ever evolving and it needs to be a shapeshifter in order to be effective. What are some of the other things that you see? I'll tap your brain while I have you. What are some of the other changes that you see coming or hope are coming for Agile?
What I'm hoping comes from Agile is, and I think as I was trying to get to know you, I read your blog, but you brought up the good point of just going back to the basics, right? Where Agile goes wrong, Agile was always meant to be simplistic by nature, right? So it really would require you to be disciplined and to really get good at really going from idea to something you can test. So I'd like to see Agile go from things like, instead of saying minimal viable product, minimal viable experiment, and realize we don't know what we want to build. And that learning is part of the Agile journey in a way business people can get. I want people to remember the reason why the grandiose people climbed the mountain to create the manifesto. It was to build working software, right? Period. Not velocity, not team celebration, not the simplistic, hey, I value you, I'm grateful for you. That's fine. But I think sometimes we try to overly manufacture that instead of, let's just get great ideas out there and see how they land with users and customers, right? Because technology is the greatest enabler ever. I couldn't have been born in any better of a time where I was faced with, there's something I can't do, and then technology came and it made what was previously impossible possible. And I'm glad I've gotten to be able to experience it, because if I was born now, I wouldn't know what the struggle was for somebody with physical mobility challenges to navigate the world, because technology has been a really a leveling effect to even the playing field.
Absolutely. Again, you bring up another interesting point, that opposites matter. So technology has been a great enabler for you. It's been something that's allowed you to exist and survive and thrive, but at the same time, it's a bit of a curse, because I think that it has created a default mode for many people where we expect safety and convenience and ease, perhaps to a fault, which, I don't know, is that one of the driving factors that causes you to speak about the importance of resilience?
I think it's resilience, because I just shared with you where technology was good, it was an enabler, but there's never been no other time in history that I think we got to factor technology and ethics, right? Because technology used for bad things, wrongful things, misuse of data, misleading the users can be also bad. So I think technology and ethics need to be governed more than ever before, because what you said, it's so easy to use, it's so accessible, so too can it be easily exploitable. So I think we got to always remember human principles and behaviors, and don't use technology to be a mask, don't use technology for bad purposes, but keep it in the good hands of good purposes and utilize it to really connect the world. Because one of the other things that came out of the pandemic, which is what I really like, is meetups have all gone virtual. So I don't need to worry about physically going anywhere. I have an ability to attend a meetup anywhere in the world and to learn from different people that I wouldn't normally be exposed to. Because if we go to the Toronto meetup scene, we see all the same people, right? And they're great, they're awesome. But isn't it great to maybe join a meetup in Boston, New York, India, and see what other cultures are doing with the similar problems and what they're facing. That's only going to expand the way we learn and the patterns that we see, that we can head some challenges off, or even, help others that are struggling something we previously did. So I think, when you lose something, there's always something that you usually gain in return, from my experience.
Now, when you talk about doing good and being good and doing charitable things, such as you mentioned that you're working with an organization in Boston for young people, from what I've read, I feel like a lot of that may come from your dad. Your dad sounded like the kind of guy who would do great, kind deeds, but you'd be the last to know because he'd be the last to talk about them. Now, my father, I lost him some 14 years ago, and when we knew he was dying, I said to him, I'm not sad, except for one thing, because I was in my early 30s at the time. I said, you're never going to get to see all the things that I haven't become yet. I still got work to do, and you won't be here to see it. And he said to me, well, that was going to be the case anyway. That's always the case, which was very wise and almost funny. But what influence did your dad have on your life? Because I love the way you talk about him.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but me, it was you don't truly appreciate what you had until he was gone. And what my dad was, even before, so just to give insight to who my dad was, he was a blue-collar person that he was part owner of a heating, cooling, plumbing, electrical company, and he was my first example of what a true leader was. And the way that he was invisibly present before that was a thing, and his humble leadership really taught me of how he built relationships with every one of his people, to really get to know them, to be able to support them and get the most out of them. And this is, my dad only had a grade 8 education, but he had a way to touch and connect people in a different way. And part of that is why he could see things before others. And, I always, and I don't know if you do this, Chris, but I always think to myself, what would I say to my dad if some magical moment came where he could come down for 30 minutes and we could have a drink, what I would say to him. And have you ever done that before, Chris?
Of course, absolutely.
And, I was thinking about it the other day of, I'd want to thank my dad for telling me it's going to be hard. It's going to be a struggle. It's going to be almost impossible. But I'd want to thank my dad for teaching me the word "and." Things were going to be impossible. Things didn't look possible. Things were going to be a struggle. Things were going to want to make me give up. And we're still going to do it anyways. And I would like to thank him for teaching me the word "and." Because despite everything we all have to go through, and we got to acknowledge it, it's real, and we have to do something about it. Right? But would almost displace it, it still exists. Because people will always go, hey, you overcame cerebral palsy. And I'm like, no, I'm still in the power chair. I'm still right here. Yeah. But I've learned to live with cerebral palsy. I have cerebral palsy and I've done this. And I'd want to thank him when most people wanted to give up on me. He didn't have the answers, but he was courageous enough to see what they could be. And I try to coach others to think that way. And I try to coach myself to think that way. Because sometimes, especially as you get older, you're like, is this bullshit worth it? And then you got to remind yourself of the why. Right? We're here for a greater purpose. Even when I did that 5K walk, it wasn't for cerebral palsy. It would have been self-serving, but it was for cancer.
Right. I remember that.
And I think that, despite any of our hardships and challenges, diversity, we should, if we want to be inclusive, we got to support others. So it's putting our own individual circumstances to the side to be able to unite and support others, especially with how crazy the world is now. and I shouldn't say now, it probably has always been.
It has.
But it takes a situation to remind us that we never overcame it. We just learned to accept it, and some things shouldn't be accepted. And, it's interesting times we live in for sure.
Absolutely, but you have so much to teach us about that adaptability and that resilience. And I'll note to everyone that you're a teacher at heart. I mean, the big part of what you do is teach. And if you're just getting into meditation now, you'll eventually come across the concept of teaching without speaking, which implies that sometimes, and I struggle with this, the fewer words you use, the better. It really is deeds, acts, and the way that we show up that matters most if you're truly teaching people. What's that mean to you as a leader?
I think it's being invisibly present, right? Because I think everybody has their own answers, or they have the right answer. It's providing the space and quietness for them to do that, right? To do it in the most minimal words, to do it in the most minimal keystrokes, because every keystroke is precious.
Mm-hmm. Now, because you're a teacher, you finish most of your public videos with the, let me leave you with 3 things. Now, anyone can watch your TED Talk and get inspired. And I mean, there's a lot of TED Talks out there, and I think we have an abundance of inspiration, of which yours is one of many. But since I have you here, I got to ask you, if you could tell people what is one thing that you do every day, not inspiration-wise, but what's one action you take, one ritual that you have that you believe makes you resilient and that makes you who you are?
I get out of bed every morning.
I like that. So that means it doesn't matter what you got to face, you get up and you take it head on, right?
Yeah, like that's the only kind of one thing I can give you is just get back up. It's a new day. It's a new opportunity. It might be a shitty day. It might be a good day, but it'll be your day.
Oh, man. I hope everyone caught that. I really hope you did, because that's so important. It's just getting up. It is showing up consistently every day. I think it's Bill Gates who says that showing up is 90% of success, but I think we forget that. Yeah, it's not about doing grand things. It's not about conquering massive challenges in every second. It's about showing up with them every day, consistently, even in a small way, over time. Would you tend to agree?
I totally agree. And just like every sprint is a new opportunity to learn, every day you get up is a new opportunity. And there's some days I just suck, right? Yeah. I won't lie. I'm not always inspirational out of a can. There's some days where it really challenges you, but knowing that if I can wake up, that's the first obstacle to overcome, is waking up.
Yeah.
And if you can wake up and get out of bed, what could be possible?
That's right. That's right. And hey, another day above dirt, like you say, every keystroke matters.
Exactly.
My friend, I am so glad that I had the chance to finally speak with you today. And I know my tribe is listening and they can't wait to hear what you have to say and what you brought today. So I want to thank you for being so open. I want to thank you for being unique. You're a guest like none other that I've ever had before. I've really appreciated the chance to get to know you. Is there anything that you are working on that's exciting for you, that's coming up, that you'd like to tell us about?
My book, and just every day I'm sharing what I'm thought. From going to where you think you don't have a voice, where we live in a world where we have social platforms like LinkedIn and Medium and stuff. If I can help in any way or share what I'm going through, just take time to either read my Twitter, LinkedIn, or Medium. And if that helps you help others, let's just keep doing that. And that's what I'm doing. It's not one big thing. It's a series of a lot of little things that sometimes might not land on you and sometimes will. But I feel fortunate to have an ability to connect from when I never thought I would ever be able to. So anytime somebody makes reference to something I've said or done, it makes the struggle to speak all the more worth it.
Oh man, I hope everyone caught that one too, that despite everything, you feel truly privileged to have a voice and to be able to contribute and make a difference. So thank you, my friend. I really appreciate you spending time with me today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. Let's meet up for a drink again sometime.
We're going to do it in the real as soon as we can.
Oh, that would be awesome.
All right, my brother. Thank you for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Let me tell you, that was one of the more personal and inspiring conversations I've had in a long while. I'm going to have a hard time topping that one. Well, listen, stay connected with Dave. You can find him at davedame.com or at ddame on Twitter. Thank you, as always, for taking the time to listen. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you got as much out of it as I did. Can't wait for the next one. I'll see you there.